well-behaved woman is trim and proper. Chores, always done, not a hair out of place. When the husband comes home, she greets him with a smile.
I'm sorry, what the fuck?
Are you tired of Hitler?
I feel no shame.
Okay, one liar as a kid can find another liar.
I want that stricken from the record.
How else is she gonna learn if she doesn't have a feather?
I can ball fuck in the big house.
You're a mess, girl. I am here to audition for Babysitters Club extras.
I brought my own hammer.
All right, welcome back to Well-Behaved Women, everyone. This is the part 3 that was promised. So when last we left our friend Jeanne, or Joan, as we're going to call her now, Joanie, she was riding off into her umpteenth battle with a bunch of her cohorts, and she may or may not have been taking orders from the king. I am going to take back just few minutes, so if you're hearing some of the same things from last episode, just be patient. You'll get to new material soon enough. And, well, enjoy. In March 1430, Charles was still observing the truce, but the Duke was laying siege to the town to take control. Now, there are conflicting stories of how Joanie's next movements with her army kind of went, like where they went. And how Rumor is. So, some say she couldn't have shown up with the army without funding by that crown. Okay. By the King Charles, the King of France, right?
Because she did all those sieges recently.
There was so many funds that were needed for her to be able to do this, right?
Uh-huh. Okay.
Others say she acted with neither Charles's permission nor his knowledge of the expedition.
Scandal. Which is it? Unless it was one of those secret option C's where it's like, well, technically Charles knew, but he didn't want the world to know he knew.
Maybe.
It could be any of those, folks. We may never know.
It could be any of them.
Yeah, we don't know for sure. This is all speculation.
So, Compiègne, I don't know. I'm sorry. It's way north. So on their way, they get bigger and bigger and bigger. So this army like grows and grows and grows.
Snowballs.
Which should be a good thing, right?
Should.
The French army growing in numbers to go and have this battle, that should be great. In a town called Melun, other commanders joined her, and their troops continued on north, even bigger, at Lagny-sur-Marne.
Ooh, excuse us.
They defeated the English and the Burgundians. The army took their commander captive. Another mercenary named Franquet d'Arras.
Frank?
Yeah.
So he joined in, I assume?
No, they took him prisoner.
Took him prisoner.
But normal procedure for a prisoner of war, that was to be exchanged for other prisoners or ransomed, right?
Yeah.
But the Burgundians, they're none too popular in this place. So after a trial in this town, Lagny-sur-Marne, right? After a trial that found his ass super fucking guilty, right?
You're double guilty, sir?
Super fucking guilty. Joanie allowed the townspeople to execute him. She was like, sure, have your way. That's fine.
Oh, fuck, girl. Cool. Whoa. I know this is how you want to deal with it.
If this is how you want to deal with it as townspeople, that's how you deal with it. Great.
Okay, yeah. Like, power to the people, but man, these people are brutal.
None of my business.
Yeah.
So they arrive in Compiègne on May 14th, 1430.
Okay.
The crowd had grown considerably on the journey there, but then the countryside that they were going through made it pretty much impossible to travel in like such huge fucking numbers, right?
Right. So they ended up splitting up?
Yeah. So Joanie cut her forces down to about 400. Oh my God, 400 men.
That's tiny.
400 out of a lot more.
That could get wiped out like nothing.
A week later, Joanie and the Armagnac forces went north to a camp outside of a place called Margny. Mm-hmm. And with a number of people, they were no match for the Burgundians.
Oh, shit. This is it.
So the Burgundians and the English, they captured Joanie. And she surrendered to a colonel or a commander or somebody called
Colonel Dick.
Lionel de Vendôme, who took her to Jeanne de Luxembourg's castle as a prisoner.
Luxembourg.
Yep.
I know that. Luxembourg. Is it still in Principality nowadays?
I think so.
Yeah, it's on the Swiss border.
Something like that.
That's really south, though. They're up north. What's he doing up there? You know, these are not relevant questions.
Right.
Yeah. You're like, yes, Hannah, they are not. You're in the weeds again, girl.
Joanie's a prisoner.
Okay, yes.
Joanie just got captured.
That's all that's important. Joanie got captured by some dude.
By the French, or by the English,
yeah,
by the Burgundians.
Burgundian, yes. But I mean, like, some Burgundian dude named Colonel Dick.
Lionel de Vendôme.
You say potato, I say potato.
Joanie wasn't having being captured. She was like, no, fuck this.
Yeah,
right?
I can imagine.
So she tries to escape.
Girl. Yes. I'm sorry. I'm all about escapes. Let's go.
They caught her.
Ah!
They transferred her to another castle.
Just look the other way.
And she jumped out the window into a dry moat.
Oh. She
was desperate to get away.
was desperate.
And she injured the fuck out of her leg, so she was injured and she was recaptured. You can't go anywhere, so they brought her back, right? So now she's a prisoner again.
Girl, I know you're divine, but like you can't fly.
Yeah. Arras came next. The Burgundians took her there in November, and at this point, it was fairly clear that Charles had abandoned her and was not coming back for her. Like.
God.
Hadn't tried to negotiate for her.
None of this
nothing
would have happened without her. None of his fortunes.
And none of the things that happened to her would have happened if he hadn't sent her into battle.
I know.
So it really is his fault as much as it is her fault.
Right. And the thing is she did everything for you.
She did everything for you, but you also believed her.
You did.
You believed this
forget.
maniacal woman who had visions of angels that said she was of God, and you just let this crazy woman into battle, and then you're like abandoning her.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's just really shitty. But because she's a woman, the society I don't think cared.
Absolutely not.
No, they were like, you did do your job, but you didn't go home, and that's on you.
The Burgundians were overjoyed that she'd been captured. They were like, she's no longer a threat. She's not going to get our armies anymore. She's not going to take our towns. They have, we've got the mascot.
The monster's been caught.
We got their mascot. The monster's been caught. Oh my God. She was a girl. She's literally a teenage girl.
But they were scared of her, all right?
Oh my God.
So remember that. You were scared of a teenage girl.
They were. The English wanted to put her on trial, so they negotiated for custody of her. So the Burgundians and the English by this time are kind of separating their own little sides.
They're kind of detaching, and they're just look, who's
they're
gonna
detaching
try this
a little
bitch?
bit. Yeah, they're starting to get a little colder towards each other.
She burned our towns, but she took your throne, essentially. So who fought?
Well, they paid for it. So the English paid. They paid 10,000 livres tournois and took her to Rouen. Rouen.
I think
Rouen.
Is it Rowan or Roan?
I think so.
Do you think it's Roan?
Rouen. Rouen.
Rune?
Rune.
I don't know. We're not French again. We're going to keep apologizing.
I'm going to just say Rowan. Rouen. I don't know.
Whatever works. Our town.
So our town. Oh my God. So they paid her, and they paid the Burgundians. They took her to our town, and that's the main headquarters for the English in France at that time. Charles made no attempt to regain custody or secure freedom for Joanie at all.
Absent king.
But once in Rouen, it was time to try the witch.
Burn her! What do we do with the witches? All right.
Our
main girl is captured and now being moved to another town.
She's in Rouen, and it's time to try her, right? They're trying her.
Burn her!
Her trial begins January 9th, 1431.
So close to January 6th. Just kidding.
She was charged with heresy and blasphemy, having worn men's clothing and having demonic visions.
She had pants?
She had pants and demonic visions. Come on. And not only did she have the demonic visions, but she acted upon those visions and refused to submit to the church because in Joanie's mind, only God could judge her.
I mean, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. She goes, you're mere mortals. None of you have seen angels.
Basically.
Yeah, okay. I see where they're getting the witchcraft thing. And I always knew that Joan of Arc was burned at the stake. But I just didn't realize that pants were part of the equation.
Yeah, like literally from the time that de Baudricourt, like back in her hometown in Domremy, from the time he had her dress in men's clothing to kind of disguise her, from then on,
never went back.
She never went back.
Because she learned the liberty that is wearing pants. All right? It's comfortable. You could sit cross-legged without flashing someone.
Yeah. It was great.
That's like excellent.
She also had demonic visions. She acted upon the visions. She refused to submit to the church. And this last part was really important, the refusing to submit to the church, because they really didn't try her in a court of law. It was an ecclesiastical trial that she was faced with.
Which we see so many different times where men want to get what they want. So they don't go to the court of law. That
they go to something else
that they can manipulate.
They can manipulate, yeah. And ecclesiastical trials work very differently than legal trials,
Salem
right?
witch trials was an ecclesiastical court, if I remember.
Yep.
Or in Turbiner.
And in an ecclesiastical court, public heresy was a capital crime.
So she could die for it.
Literally, they would sentence her to death.
Fucking hell.
And it was
at this time, I'm not surprised.
And at that point, it was like literally, if she was convicted in the ecclesiastical court, the secular court would be the one to sentence her to death.
So
it goes from the church, then to the state, and then they sentence her.
What would they have done to us?
Oh, we would have been burned so long ago.
Oh my God.
I would have been burned so fucking long ago.
The second I said, fuck you, I'd be like, done. She's a witch. She swore.
Witch!
She used the devil's words.
She did. Honestly, I would try to be one of those, like, the kind of the old witch hag in the woods and just be like, I'm going to build my own little log cabin. I'm just going to live out here.
Dream.
I'll grow my own little herbs. I'll figure it the fuck out. That's what I wanted.
All right.
You know, and the older I get, the more I realize this, because I was feeding my squirrels in my house robe and my slippies the other day. And I was like kind of talk singing to them like I just do with animals. And I realized as a middle-aged woman, I have been warned my entire life about the crazy old hippie lady that like is a stoner and talks to animals and like has crazy, you know, hair and lives in a house robe or whatever, like, and just kind of is whatever. But as a middle-aged person who is exactly that, dude, I fucking get it.
I love it.
I know that I'm the one they warned me about, but also that life is okay.
They don't want you to reach your true witchy potential. That's the thing. I follow on Reddit Witches versus Patriarchy. That's the subreddit that I'm on. It's so great. They have their little girls, like, for Halloween. They'll be like, oh, what do you want to be? And if they ever say they want to be a witch, these women go crazy for it.
I love it.
And it's always filled with, like, they'll do a lot of, like, Rosie the Riveter costumes, like a lot of historic women. And it's just so very women's identity tied to this idea of witchery and having to toe this line between following our own intuition, following our guts, listening to our own minds, which is on the witchy side.
Yeah.
Versus fitting into the fucking society that we're stuck in and having to toe the line to stay alive.
Well, and I think that, and we're going off on a really big tangent here.
Again.
But I do think that there is a very interesting, like, quality that women have that men just don't, where there is this gut intuition, these little gut feelings, and more often than not, and like we were talking earlier about this interview where like I could feel the moment it changed,
right?
And it wasn't a visual cue. They didn't shift in their seats. They didn't like, you know, widen their
it's
eyes
just
or
the tone
anything.
of their voice, even the tiniest change.
There wasn't anything perceivable
Yeah.
physically about what they changed, but I could feel the shift and like the shift in mood and the
Yeah.
shift in tone in my gut. And I just knew that I didn't get it.
I have an idea as to why that is. And it's biology.
Yeah.
Because the brain between men and women, the corpus callosum, the network of fibers that connect the left and right hemisphere together, we have a much bigger one as women.
I'm sure.
Yeah, that we tend to be more communicative. We tend to pick up on these things that men just don't pick up on.
We're a lot more perceptive of like little things.
Which can be good and bad. It could be bad because that's when you end up like misinterpreting something a friend said, and then you start overthinking it, and then it becomes a much bigger deal because we're just so tuned into such things. But on the other hand, like men, you could also just be completely oblivious to it and think that you rocked that interview and then be upset when you find out you didn't.
Yeah.
And it's this obliviousness, but it can also be a good thing for women where it's also more connecting.
Well,
We're more communicative. We're more community based.
Well, there's also a protective element of it. Like when I was a kid, my late aunt was married to this guy, and I remember getting a very kind of strange feeling from him early on. So I just kind
Vibes, they're off.
The vibes were off for me as a little kid, and I didn't know what that was about. So I just was like, you know what? It just seems like easier for me to not be around him alone.
I'm gonna go back to this.
Yeah, like, or I would just kind of leave the room, and if he was in it, if there was an option for me to do something else, I'd do something else.
Yeah.
And as I got a little older, I learned that I also felt that way when he was around my girl cousins. And because I was the oldest, I'd make sure that I was in the room and making sure that like everything was kind of hunky-dory. So
Which is kind of like not something you're supposed to do as have to do as a kid.
Right, but it was a layer of protection
Instinct.
because I think he also could perceive that like I was not comfortable with him.
Yeah.
And so he
Throw
just
up
kind
the
of
signals.
watched himself, right? But I remember one year at a family reunion, I was sitting at a kitchen table with my mom and like a bunch of my aunts. And I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but someone brought up something creepy that he had done, and a couple of the aunts like rolled their eyes.
Oh, fuck.
And just like it wasn't a big deal. And I think I said something like kind of affirming to that, or I don't remember exactly how it got on the conversation, but basically it got to the point where it was like, if you are ever uncomfortable with him, you know that you can not be alone with him. You can just leave. You can say something if
talk to us.
If he doesn't, if he's not treating you with respect or whatever.
Yeah.
And I remember like it was very validating because I had never said anything to them. I just had already started doing that myself.
Yeah.
But I learned from that of like, okay, they're already paying attention to that, which means that something is going on. So
Like
I
they're
just
aware he's fucking weird. About shit.
and so I just kind of like learned to trust that little gut feeling, and even if I don't really understand it, and over time, it's served me well a lot of times, and it's like also it's kind of if you're not informed with it, like you can also let it stew. Yeah. Luckily, we were able to like, he left the family and we also found out all the shit that he did. So it was like, okay, yeah, we got it.
Yep. Instinct
Problem
confirmed.
solved, gone, instinct confirmed, very validating.
Yeah. And it took me a while to learn to trust my gut. Like in my 20s, I figured out that my gut usually is working for me.
When I finally figured that out and when I finally started trusting it in my late 20s, that was when I was able to leave the church and like try to actually work my way through my own life. Yeah.
It's getting in tune with yourself versus society on the outside.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, Joanie,
right.
it's being she's gonna get burned, man.
Right. So it's an ecclesiastical trial, but then the sentence is carried out by a secular court. And if she's convicted, she's sentenced to death. And the English, with their endless time and their endless resources, they are more than happy to fund this trial, however long it takes and however much it costs.
As long as she's guilty.
It was a wildly political move. And they let her testify. And then they tried to make a fool of her, basically. So Joanie said her visions had ordered her to take down the English and crown Charles.
Yep, I was just following God's laws.
She said that she had been successful in those ventures, and because she'd been successful, that was proof enough to her that she indeed had been sent by God.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie.
It's proof
here.
positive. Come on.
But here's the thing: I'm not entirely against this, though. She had no fucking training and led on the field to victory.
No, it was a
row.
very like valid and straightforward argument of like,
yeah. Had I been raised in this time, I'd be like, she's got a point.
She's got a really big point.
She's got a really good point.
The English really took umbrage with Joanie's testimony because, big if true, right? If she was for real, that meant that the English probably really didn't have a claim to the French throne. That was God's way of like actually telling them that they needed to get out of the country.
Now, boys.
Exactly.
Get out of France.
No.
Thank you. He's like,
Get the fuck out of here before I really get angry. I don't know.
I don't know what God
That
sounds
was
like.
bad.
What if God's like, hey guys, welcome back to my channel.
Hey, it's Glenn.
It's Glenn. Who's Glenn?
You don't watch Superstore?
No,
but
I don't.
That's a character from a show called Superstore, and he has a really high pitched voice.
Oh,
and it's very cute because he's also like kind of he can have his tough guy moments, but he's a very gentle man.
Yeah.
So his voice fits the personality. But imagining God as Glenn with his high pitched voice, that's funny to me. Anyway,
you know, it'd be hilarious and scary as if God was like Andy Dick. Do you know Andy Dick? Never mind. That's a conversation for later.
Okay.
Cocaine.
So that's God's way of trying to stop them from the conquering.
Right.
But the English really didn't like that idea. No. They were like, but we can't have it be that because
we're English.
We want the dual monarchy. We want the one king, two thrones kind of thing here.
And they claimed France for a long time too. After this,
they really did.
Even to this day, I think, maybe not to this day, but up till like recent history, the kings of England were also still called the kings of France too.
But if Joanie was found guilty, right? If Joanie's found guilty, that's a horse of a different color.
Is it blue?
And then green.
Oh.
And then yellow.
It changes. It's a
orange.
mood horse.
It is a mood horse. If she was guilty, if she was a heretic, that meant that the man who consecrated her as a noble and as sent of God was also a heretic.
That's fucked.
Yeah.
That's the
so
loophole.
If Joanie is guilty, then Charles is also guilty, and we can go after him too.
And that's when they start pouring more money into this trial.
And if they can delegitimize Charles, they can unseat the kingly king. Yeah.
Yeah, I see where they're going.
You see where they're going with this.
I do see where they're going, where they're like, this is your tool, Joanie. She's fake, and you said it was real, which means you're fake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's kept in less than perfect conditions during this time.
As is tradition at this time.
As is tradition.
They did not take care of their prisoners well.
Let's see if this sounds familiar. During the trial, the church was supposed to have custody of her. But while in custody, she was only supposed to have women attending her and guarding her.
But
only women, right?
Right.
Instead, she was kept in an English prison, not a church prison. And she was guarded by males.
Ew.
Commanded by a duke.
Hate it.
Yeah.
This was a bad situation for her.
She was subjected to lengthy interrogations. She was tortured.
Yeah.
She was denied legal counsel for long periods of time.
They love a sham court and a sham trial.
And nobody read the charges against her at all until way after the interrogations began.
Oh, she needed Miranda rights in that moment.
Oh, yeah.
But they didn't have those.
The judge for the trial was a man named Pierre Cochon of Beauvais.
Let's call him Bovine.
All right,
I'm
cool.
kidding.
Pierre Bovine.
Pierre Bovine.
Pierre Bovine. He was a supporter of the English and of the Duke of Burgundy.
Sketchy. Sketchy.
Now, some records said he had established Joanie's infamy before the trial had even started, but that's just not necessarily true. Like, unlikely, probably.
He's just spouting propaganda to get the...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he wants to put this image out.
Well, and he's paid by the English to serve as the judge. And
my God, that is so corrupt.
And even though the clergy for the trial were mostly French, most of them were supporters of the English rule. This is not a great start.
No, this is a completely tilted stage.
Joanie kept her cool during the whole thing. She she also had to basically act as her own defense.
That's rough.
And somehow became a lawyer or something in this time.
Jesus, please take the case. I'm telling you, like, that. If this is when I would phone a friend, Jesus, and I would say, Bud, I need you as my legal counsel. This is your court.
I keep thinking of the Carrie Underwood song.
I know. Jesus, take the wheel. I took it straight from that. Yep. Yes. Jesus, take this case.
Jesus, take this case.
I don't know the song. I just know it's named Jesus, Take the Wheel or something.
Can't act in my own defense. Anyway.
That's good.
It's not.
Oh. I liked it. All right, so she's her own defense.
She's her own defense. So during the trial, she asked those who interrogated her to take turns asking her questions because they would basically all talk on top of each other.
I mean, again, a little divine knowledge that she knew that that's not how this fucking court is supposed to work.
One at a time, please. Just not all at once.
Yeah.
Just one.
Each of you has your turn with the witness like you do in a court today. That's how it should be.
And she also made them refer back to their own records when they were not being accurate.
Love that.
She's like, if you will actually look at this page right here. Exactly.
Oh, wow. Holy shit.
They threw her a bunch of trick questions meant to trip her up and make her fuck up. She was asked if she knew that she was in the grace of God. This seems like a really simple question, but it's not. So if she answered yes, she would be charged with heresy because nobody can be certain that they're in God's grace.
Right.
But if she said no, she would have been confessing her own guilt as an imposter.
So she'd have to do something like, I really believe so.
Instead of getting tripped up, Joanie said if she was not in God's grace, she hoped that God would put her there. If she was in God's grace, she hoped that she would continue to stay there.
Yeah, so she kind of danced around it and gave basically two answers to a trick question.
Boom, flip it. Yep.
Yeah, here's side A and side B.
There you go. Apparently the interrogators were not prepared for that answer. She gave it...
Wait a minute. She's smart?
Yeah. They kind of stood for a minute and they were like...
Next question. Shuffle papers.
Fuck. Yeah. They were more than happy to try to coerce the guilty testimony by showing her a bunch of torture tools and basically said, look, all right, here we go. You don't want to be poked, prodded, scraped, stretched, eaten.
They're trying to scare her.
Raked, whatever.
And I don't want to do those things,
And I don't want
to
do those things. The cleanup is really going to be a long time. It's a whole thing. So
this is an ecclesiastical court.
So you should just tell us that you are in fact guilty, because you are, and then we won't have to use these tools on you.
Objection. Leading the witness.
She said, no, I'm not going to be intimidated into lying.
No.
Fuck that.
I really believe in my delusions strongly.
Well, I mean, yeah, literally. She said she was sent by God. She's the Blues Sister, remember?
Yeah.
He didn't...
Old Joanie over here.
So, what do we call Koshan?
Pierre
Cucci?
No. No, Pierre...
Pierre Bovine. Pierre Bovine. All right.
Bovie. Pierre Bovie.
Pierre Bovine didn't really have a plan for this result, so he met with a dozen clerics to decide whether or not to actually use the torture tools on her. He's like, but she didn't fall for it.
Do this?
Do I actually have to like
In front of people?
Yeah.
It's been a while, man. I'm rusty.
Luckily, the majority decided against torturing a woman who
Okay,
was
good.
sticking to her testimony for telling the truth.
Yeah, sticking to God.
Yeah.
She's essentially outplayed them.
One of those trial clerics stepped down.
Hey, he goes, I don't want to be a part of this sham.
Yep, he thought the testimony had been coerced and the intention was to entrap her.
Good. I respect that dude.
Another cleric challenged Pierre Bovine's right to judge, and then they put him in jail.
Oh, I respect that dude too.
There is also ample evidence that the trial records have been falsified.
Of course.
Pierre Bovine asked the University of Paris to deliberate on 12 articles of heresy.
I'm just going to make a quick joke. Nobody alters documents like a white man. Thank you. Thank you.
Bravo.
Thank you. That's a history rewrite if I've ever seen one. Yes, they are very good at that. The University of Paris and the clerics, they approved the articles of heresy. So on May 23rd, 1431, the court formally admonished Joanie. Oh, admonished.
Admonished.
So what does that mean?
So on the 24th, she's marched into the churchyard. She's shamed.
Okay.
It's a formal,
God.
like, you did a bad thing. So on the 24th, she's
Joanie
marched.
Arc did a bad thing. Joanie Arc did a bad thing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a reference I don't think anyone's going to get, so move on.
So on the 24th, she's marched into the churchyard of Saint Ouen for a proper public condemnation.
Everybody get your
So
tomatoes
everyone
ready.
can come around and see the shame that
Yep,
she is.
Please file in all around the stage, please.
Right.
And get your fruit and vegetables ready now. Put your 3D glasses on now.
So Pierre Bovine, he read Joanie's sentence out loud. He was like, here's what's going to happen.
This bitch did.
This is what's going to happen. So she agreed to submit, and Pierre Bovine gave her an quote-unquote abjuration document, which basically meant that she renounced the holy status that she had been given. She agreed to abandon the notion that she had visions or that she'd been sent by God.
She's not going to do that.
As part of the agreement, she would never, ever bear arms or wear men's clothing again.
That's never going to happen.
She would be placed in a decent prison. She'd be allowed to attend mass every week, and she wouldn't be assaulted by guards.
I don't know if they can really promise that.
And well, they could, because they could move her to a prison where, like, she
where
was
there's only
basically
women.
They could send her to a nunnery.
Okay,
or like a
I
convent
see.
prison.
So then, yeah, let's go nunnery. I would say, girl, take it, but she.
Well,
we know
no,
Jen.
that was she agreed to all
Oh,
this.
she did agree.
This was the terms of her
fuck.
her agreement.
Okay.
Since Joanie had always been illiterate, the document was read aloud to her, and then she signed it.
Oh, they could have lied to her so bad.
Basically, she had to tell the public, yes, I did these things, and this is what I've agreed to in order to live.
Okay.
So since she signed the abjuration, and since she accepted all of this, and she admitted to being a heretic, but because she was repentant and she was saying, I'm renouncing my statuses, she was spared death.
Okay.
She was like, we're not going to kill her.
All right. Okay.
But if any of the terms of her abjuration were violated, if she relapsed into heresy. I air quoted right in front of the microphone like you guys were going to hear me do that. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. That was for me.
If she relapsed into being a heretic, death.
Yeah, death.
Death.
Straight to jail, death.
Straight to jail. No, not straight to jail.
Straight to death.
Straight to death. They gave her a dress so that she'd be dressed like a woman again. They shaved her head.
Oh. Sinead O'Connor style.
They took her back to her cell and they kept her in chains.
I wonder if they like reshaved her head every time it started growing back.
I don't know.
All right.
The trial clerics, it didn't matter.
No, it does not matter.
It doesn't matter.
It was very quick, I'm sure, after that.
The trial clerics did not return her to an ecclesiastical prison.
Look look at that betrayal. And that's a term of the agreement that's already been broken, but they only meant if she broke something.
No, literally, it's the first term right away.
Yeah.
She remained in English custody. The rehabilitation efforts did not go as planned. Over the next few days, Joanie was subjected to a lot of quote-unquote mistreatments.
Oh, no. My mind goes straight to she was sexually assaulted.
A lot of men.
God damn, I hate this so much.
One of them was an English noble. Guards put men's clothing into her cell and then quote-unquote forced her to wear them again.
Huh.
And then they tattled on her to Pierre Bovine and said that she'd started wearing dude clothes again.
Oh, God. I'm so pissed.
So Pierre Bovine sent clerics to try and beg her to wear a dress. They were like, please. But the English didn't even give them access to speak with her, much less beg. And at this point, Pierre Bovine knows something is going on. So he goes and he visits himself.
All right. Ask her if it's true.
So,
Girl, tell the truth.
Pierre Bovine shows up on May 28th with a bunch of his clerics. And according to the records, the records
that we know white men change.
Joanie said she'd decided to go back to wearing men's clothes.
Yeah, see?
And she decided to do this because it was more fitting that she dress like a man while being held with male guards. She also said the judge had broken his promise and he hadn't moved her to a safe prison and they hadn't released her from chains and they hadn't allowed her to go to mass.
Well, so now I'm wondering if she really did choose to wear men's clothing again. We don't know.
Literally, it was a trade. So she would continue wearing dude clothing until they held up their end of the bargain of the abjuration document.
All right. So I don't know if she was tricked into wearing them or if she really did make that choice.
Maybe it was a trick at first and then she was like, you know what? No, this is
okay.
Fuck.
No,
like,
it could be, yeah.
Maybe you're upset about this, but I didn't get anything that I was promised. So, you know what? Fuck you.
Man, the fact that they were so concerned about her wearing dude clothing.
Isn't that crazy?
Clothing,
yeah.
That is something that they're like, oh no, we must get all the clerics down there to
I know.
beg her.
Yeah. So Pierre Bovine asked about her visions. Mm-hmm. Were those even fake? And Joanie said the voices had come back and they had admonished her for surrendering out of fear of death and that she was never going to deny them again. And with that, Pierre Bovine had exactly what he needed. She'd stood up for the visions that she'd already agreed were the mad ravings of a heretic.
Okay.
So the return of listening to them and claiming their existence was enough of a relapse to condemn her to the eternal rest.
God.
On the 29th, 42 assessors showed up to decide Joanie's fate. 2 said she should be released into the secular courts immediately. The other 40 said that she should be read the abjuration again just to remind her what the terms were and explained thoroughly. Perhaps the poor, stupid woman brain didn't understand clearly enough. You just got to read it again. Go for it. By the end of the day, 42 voted she was a relapsed heretic and should be, quote, abandoned to the secular power, the English, for punishment, end quote. Heretics are normally denied some of the last rites of people about to die.
Yeah.
On the morning of May 30th, she took her final sacraments. She was marched to Rowen's old marketplace and read the sentence of condemnation. Proper procedure dictated once the sentence was read, she would be turned over to a bailiff of the city for the secular sentencing.
Yeah.
Instead, she was handed directly to the English.
Oh, fuck. Okay.
They walked her to a plastered pillar where they tied her up.
Oh, this is it, girl. They're not playing with you anymore.
As they were doing this, she asked for a cross. She wanted to see the symbol of the Lord one more time before she died. A crucifix was fetched from a nearby church, and in the meantime, an English soldier made her one from a stick and gave it to her.
Okay, that's like, I mean, this is a horrible moment, but that particular thing, he made a cross out of a stick. That's kind of cute.
Very kind of cute, yeah.
That's kind of cute.
Joanie kissed the cross and placed it next to her chest. When the professional crucifix arrived, they allowed Joanie to hold it until her hands were tied.
Okay.
The English lit a flame. The pillar The surrounding wood and Joan burst into flames. And as she burned to death, the church crucifix was held before her. Once her body was burned up and just a husk of a shape, they tossed her into the Seine.
Great, they just threw her fucking in the river.
Yep. Done.
Bye.
Sploosh.
Oh
Just
my
wash
God.
it away. Yep.
Ah, they're so brutal at this time.
The country is littered with bodies.
I know, it's just, I gotta remember that.
The English had fucked up, though.
Yeah?
And they knew it. They pretty much knew it immediately. The French army had already been bolstered by her support, her courage, and her faith to the very end.
Yeah.
And the fact that she died for her faith.
She's a martyr.
The war wasn't over, but the English never regained their footing. The Burgundians abandoned the English a few years later, and the war went on. 22 years after her death, the English finally were defeated and expelled everywhere but Calais. Charles was now king. He goes to Paris. He looks into this record of the trial for Joanie that had taken place, and he gives it to this theologian, Guillaume Bouille, 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 I don't know.
Oh, no.
Ugh. Bouilla. I don't know. He's dead. It doesn't matter.
His name still kind of matters, but we're so American we can't even say it.
Again, I'm so sorry. But they had him open up an inquest into what had happened. After a few interviews, it became really clear that she'd been a political prisoner and put to death without basis.
Extremely political.
Extremely political.
For sure.
This allowed for an official investigation. So in 1452, a second inquest was opened by Guillaume de Stuteville and Jeanne Brehal, two legal figures recently appointed. I'm happy.
It's okay.
Sorry.
I think we've
so
apologized
sorry.
enough. People know.
Oh my God. I'm just exhausted at this point with these names.
I know.
So about 20 witnesses were interviewed. There's 27 articles that came out about the trial's bias. They worked on the case for 2 years. It got to the Pope, and they had what is called a rehabilitation trial in 1455. The trial lasted 9 months, and it presented 115 witnesses.
This is like a posthumous, I think is right, appeal, essentially.
Yes, literally.
Saying, let's retake a look at this trial.
Yes. And the court found the original trial was unjust, deceitful.
A sham.
Quote, Jeanne's abjuration and her execution and their consequences were nullified.
Yay. That's the bare minimum. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They tore up the articles of accusation to really drive home that point.
See? We care.
It's gone. She's innocent. They also had a cross erected at the site of her execution.
Okay.
Because that fixes it too, right?
Yeah, but I mean, now it's too late. It's the bare minimum. I'll take it at this point.
From then on, she kind of became this cultural icon.
Yeah.
The symbol of hope and freedom and martyrdom.
Damn right.
There has been endless discussion whether she was divinely inspired or not. The histories were written by the survivors, and her reputation has gone back and forth as a savior or a madwoman.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Mm-hmm.
After the siege in New Orleans, Joanie was seen as a religious figure in the church. Mm-hmm. That never changed. In 1920, Pope Benedict XV canonized her, and her feast day is on the 30th of May, the anniversary of her execution.
All right.
She is a patron saint of France. She was not canonized as a martyr. She had been put to death by a canonically constituted court, and they hadn't murdered her for her faith in Christ, but for the private revelations Christ had given her.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how that changes things.
She was canonized as a virgin saint.
Right. But I mean, like, it was
a different court that put her to death, and
it was,
for
like,
a different reason.
So they're like, look, whatever they did doesn't make her a martyr?
She didn't die defending her faith. She died defending her individual visions of God.
So they're still trying to
angels.
say we didn't do anything wrong.
Basically.
Ah.
Socially and historically, she's absolutely seen as a martyr.
Mm-hmm.
though.
Makes sense.
And she's also seen as a visionary. Mm-hmm. And remember,
she did know how trials were supposed to go.
she did actually.
Which is very, very fascinating. I loved that.
I know, it's fucking crazy.
That's very crazy.
But socially and historically, she's absolutely seen as a martyr. She's seen as a visionary. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, if you remember way back when we were talking about January
6th?
Yeah.
I knew that was coming back. I was wondering.
So now some far-right groups are trying to claim her as one of their figures fighting for liberation and independence.
No. Oh, I hate it. Do not take her. She is ours. As women, she's ours.
It's crazy.
She fights for, well, she fought for France, but she fought for us too. She shouldn't know it yet. That's insane, and I hate it, and I don't like it. She is not an alt-right figure.
No.
She is not a far-right figure. She was in no way conservative. She was wearing pants.
Pretty much, yeah.
And she died for wearing pants and many other things.
She died for the ability to...
Joanie B. Arc. I
Joanie
still
B.
love
Arc.
that. Joanie B. Arc. Wow, I love her. I don't care if she was a mad woman or not. I just love her.
The idea of her visions was like maybe that she had epilepsy and I don't know.
Does that come with hallucinations?
I think so sometimes but maybe there's like I don't know, maybe she had grand mal seizures or something. Those could probably come with hallucinations.
I'm sticking with delusions of grandeur and a little bit of schizophrenia / bipolar.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I feel like there must have been a trigger and it must have happened.
The church bells, I think,
Yeah,
was possibly one of them.
But I don't know what would have, like, what exact. Maybe a witch came and cursed her so that every time she
It's
heard the
another
church
woman's
bells,
fault. It was
the
two
angels
women.
would appear unto her.
It was 2 women.
It was witches.
What's worse than 1 woman? 2 or
women.
more. 2 or more.
That's a damn shame.
What's a herd of witches called? A waggle. A waggle of witches.
Is that literally what it's called? Oh my God.
I don't think they have a word for that, but I'm calling it a waggle because they waggle their fingers at you and magic happens. And on that note...
Oh my God. This has been a very chaotic episode of Well-Behaved Women. I think...
chaos is a ladder.
Literally, we are at 2 hours and 50 minutes. I think once it gets down from all of the distractions.
It might be like an hour and a half.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
But that was an objectively long episode.
Yeah,
there
we
were
had a
so
lot
many
to talk
things
about.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, hey, it's Joanie B. Arc. There's a lot.
Yes.
There's a lot going on in France, in her head, in these battles.
In history.
Very much. All these different things coming together. And then one girl with delusions is like, just changes everything.
I had always heard of her growing up, but I really never got into the story. I heard her as like, she was a martyr. She was from France. She was in a battle. And they move on. Literally, it was like... That whole 100 Years' War is represented by one woman who didn't even end the war.
No.
Like, it wasn't, it was kind of a turning point, but it was far from over. They fought for another 20 years. So literally the only reason she's famous is because of these fucking visions that she had and the fact that she came from nowhere and just was in charge for a while.
Followed through.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest thing is it wasn't just a woman
and that was never part of the story. It was like we never learned. No, it was this woman who was this child, this teenager who came out of nowhere, demanded to see a king that she didn't know who he was, but she could pick him out of a fucking lineup.
Yeah.
Said she had these godly visions that she was to make sure he was a king, and then followed through on all of that and led to a bunch of wins for her.
Yeah.
And for the French
streak.
army. Yeah.
The fact that she had a streak, it wasn't just a win here and a win there. It was a like landslide.
She kind of made the countryside of France her bitch.
Love it.
Yeah.
We love it. And on that note again, it's been a fucking podcast.
It has been a fucking podcast. We will see you next week.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.